Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling one of the most transformative technologies out there, cloud computing. We're going to get into what it is, how it completely took over the world, and then the incredibly expensive paradox that almost nobody saw coming.
All right, to kick things off, let's really lock in on this one powerful idea. The cloud isn't some, magical hard drive floating in the sky. It's not a single place or even one company. The most important thing to get is this. It's a totally different way of doing things, an operating model that has changed literally everything.
So what does that actually mean in technical terms? Well, the official definition from the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, gives us this. The keywords to grab onto here are on-demand, shared pool, and minimal management. Really, it's all about getting the computing power you need right when you need it without the headache of building it all yourself. Okay, so let's dig into what really makes the cloud tick. We're going to break down the 5 core principles that make it so different from everything that came before.
According to that same NIST definition, any service that wants to call itself the cloud has to have these 5 traits. So think about it like this. You can get server time without ever talking to a human. You can access it from your phone, your laptop, anywhere. You're sharing resources with tons of other people, which makes it super efficient. You can scale up for a huge event and then shrink right back down, kind of like a rubber band. And you only pay for what you actually use, just like your electric bill.
So with a list of benefits like that, is it any surprise that businesses everywhere started this massive gold rush to move everything they had into the cloud? Let's look at exactly why that happened.
This chart just shows how the cloud completely flipped the old IT model on its head. See, before, you had to buy these massive, expensive servers, a huge capital expense, and you treat them like pets. If one got sick, the whole team would rush in to nurse it back to health. The cloud, it's the total opposite. You rent resources, which makes IT a predictable operating expense. And your servers, they're treated like cattle. If one fails, another one is automatically spun up to replace it, and you probably won't even notice. That shift from pets to cattle, that's the whole game.
And this new model, wow, it delivered some incredible benefits. All of a sudden, tiny startups could get their hands on the same kind of computing power as corporate giants. You could get an app out in minutes instead of months, and you could handle a Super Bowl-sized traffic spike without having to buy a whole stadium's worth of servers you wouldn't need the next day. This wasn't just about saving money, it was about moving faster and innovating in ways that were just impossible before.
But then, a really interesting and kind of painful thing started to happen. For the companies that became massive successes on the cloud, a huge, totally unexpected bill started coming due.
This quote right here, from the venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, sent absolute shockwaves through the tech world. What they found was that once you get big enough, the convenience of the public cloud comes at a staggering premium. We're talking 2 to 3 times more expensive than doing it yourself. And some companies even said it was 6 times more expensive. Ouch! And the impact of this? It was anything but trivial. Andreessen Horowitz estimated that this cloud tax was so high that it wiped out $500 billion in market value from public companies. This wasn't some rounding error. It was a hidden cost eating so deeply into their profits that it was fundamentally changing how much these companies were worth. That's a mind-boggling figure. Which of course brings us to this huge paradox, right? How could something that was so essential for growth turn into such a massive burden? And what is a company supposed to do when the very thing that made it successful is now holding it back?
Well, the answer, it turns out, is all about the life cycle of a company. That pay-as-you-go model is absolutely perfect when you're small and your needs are unpredictable. But once your workload becomes huge and stable, you're essentially paying a massive premium for flexibility that you just don't need anymore. Take Dropbox, for example. They saved nearly $75 million in 2 years by strategically moving some of their work off the public cloud.
So, did everyone just pack up and leave the cloud? Not at all. The industry just got a lot smarter about how it was being used. We entered an era of, let's call it, Cloud 2.0.
First up, you've got the public cloud. This is what most of us think of, services from providers like AWS or Microsoft Azure. It's incredibly powerful, it's scalable, but you are sharing all the underlying hardware with other customers. And as we've just seen, it can get really expensive.
The alternative to that is a private cloud. In this case, all the computing infrastructure is dedicated solely to your organization. This gives you the maximum amount of control, security, and privacy, but it takes a much bigger upfront investment to build and manage it all.
So you can really see the core trade-off here. A startup is almost always going to choose the public cloud for that low entry cost and massive scalability. But a big bank, they might opt for a private cloud to have total control over all their sensitive financial data. Neither one is perfect for every single situation.
And so, the industry's solution was to combine them. A hybrid cloud lets you get the best of both worlds. You can keep your most sensitive or predictable workloads on your cost-effective private cloud, while still using the public cloud for other things, or for something called cloud bursting, which is just a fancy way of saying you use it to handle unexpected spikes in traffic. It's a really pragmatic approach.
Now, these different cloud models get delivered through three main service types, which basically determine how much you manage versus how much the provider manages. With infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, you're renting the basic building blocks, the servers, the storage. With platform as a service, or PaaS, the provider handles more, like the operating system. And with software as a service, SaaS, think Gmail or Salesforce, you just use the app and they manage the entire shebang. Each layer up, you get less control, but a whole lot more convenience.
Okay, so we've seen where the cloud came from and the paradoxes it created along the way. But where is all of this heading now? Well, the future is being shaped by just a handful of giants and some incredibly powerful new trends.
First things first, let's be crystal clear about who runs this world. The cloud market is dominated by three hyperscalers. Amazon Web Services is the undisputed leader with 30% of the market. Microsoft Azure is growing fast at 20%, and then you have Google Cloud. Combined, these three control nearly 2/3 of the entire global market. It's their playground.
And these dominant players, they aren't just competing on who can rent you the cheapest server anymore. No way. They're in a full-blown arms race to define the next evolution of the cloud by building powerful and often proprietary new services on top of their massive infrastructure.
And this slide shows exactly where that race is headed. The future of the cloud isn't just about renting storage space anymore. It's about using the cloud to access incredibly powerful AI. It's about edge computing, which means processing data right there in a factory or a store to cut down on lag. It's about serverless, where you literally don't even think about servers, you just write code. And it's about multi-cloud, strategically using the best services from different providers to avoid getting locked into just one ecosystem.
And all of that brings us to our final and maybe most important question. The cloud has effectively become the central nervous system of our entire digital world. But as it gets smarter, more powerful, and is controlled by just a few massive companies, the biggest challenge we're going to face is how to balance that incredible centralized power with our need for a more independent, resilient, and decentralized digital future.